My son cut me off for 6 years without a single word. But when he saw my new lakefront cottage on Facebook, he suddenly called. Dad, I need $175,000 by next week. Don't make this difficult. He expected money. I brought something else entirely. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The October morning was crisp, leaves turning gold and crimson outside my Toronto townhouse. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee steaming beside my laptop, reviewing quarterly statements from my investment portfolio. Modest gains, steady returns. Nothing spectacular, but enough to keep me comfortable at 68. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Dad. The voice hit me like a truck. My son, my only child, 6 years of nothing, and now this single word cutting through the silence. Dad, are you there? Brandon. I managed to keep my voice steady despite my heart pounding. It's been a while. Yeah, I know. His tone was clipped, businesslike. No warmth, no apology, just efficiency. Look, I saw your Facebook post. Nice cottage. Looks expensive. I'd posted photos of the Muskoka property 3 days earlier. A small celebration after years of careful investing finally paid off. Waterfront, private dock, sunset views over the lake. I'd been proud of it. I need $175,000, Brandon continued. Transfer it by next Friday. Stephanie and I have an opportunity that won't wait. Stephanie, his wife, the woman who'd convinced him I was holding him back, that I owed him more than I'd given, that my modest lifestyle was proof I was hiding wealth from my own family. Brandon, I don't understand. 6 years, not a word, and now, don't make this complicated, Dad. You obviously have money. That cottage alone must have cost you $500,000. I'm your son. This is what family does. The line went dead. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Slowly, I set it down on the table. My hands were trembling, not from age, but from the audacity of what had just happened. $175,000, demanded like I owed him rent. I stood and walked to the window overlooking my small backyard. The maple tree I'd planted when Brandon was born had grown tall and strong. 42 years of growth. I'd thought our relationship would be the same. 6 years ago, everything had shattered. I'd sold my HVAC company after 38 years of building it from a single truck and a dream into something respectable. The sale brought in $1.8 million, more than I'd ever expected. I'd been generous, or so I thought. Gave Brandon and Stephanie $250,000 outright, no strings attached. Helped them with the down payment on their house in Vancouver. Set them up for success. It hadn't been enough. The memory surfaced unbidden. Stephanie, standing in my living room, arms crossed, her voice sharp as broken glass. You sold the company for almost $2 million and gave us scraps? We deserved at least half. Brandon worked summers at that company. He has equity in what you built. Brandon had worked 3 summers during university. Filing paperwork, answering phones. He'd quit each August to go traveling with friends. But according to Stephanie, this made him a partner, entitled to equal share. The sale covered debts, I'd tried to explain. Employee severances, pension contributions for people who worked with me for decades. The $1.8 million wasn't cash in my pocket. But Stephanie had talked over me, her voice rising, accusing me of hiding assets, of loving strangers more than my own blood. And Brandon, my son, had stood beside her, saying nothing in my defense. Just watched while his wife dismantled our relationship word by word. I'd asked them to leave. They'd left. That was 6 years ago. Since then, silence. I'd sent birthday cards, Christmas messages, texts, asking if we could talk, if we could find some middle ground. Nothing. Each message returned, unopened or ignored. Each attempt, a small humiliation. And now this. I moved to the bookshelf in my living room where the photo albums lived. Opened one carefully. Brandon at 5, missing his front teeth, grinning on his first day of kindergarten. Brandon at 16, holding up his driver's license, so proud. Brandon at 28, his wedding day, looking at Stephanie like she'd hung the moon. When had that hope become this cold transaction? I pulled out my phone, opened our message thread. 6 years of one-sided conversation stared back at me. Happy birthday, son. Thinking of you. Merry Christmas. Hope you're well. Saw the Leafs game last night. Remember when we used to watch together? Miss you. Each message a monument to rejection. I set the phone down and made myself breathe slowly. I needed to think, not react. What had changed? What triggered this sudden contact after 6 years of nothing? The cottage. The Facebook post. 3 days ago, I'd shared photos of my new property, mentioned the investment finally paying off. And now my phone had rung with demands for money. I opened Facebook on my laptop, navigated to my post. There, among the likes and comments, I saw it. Brandon's name. He'd viewed the post 11 times in 3 days. 11 separate visits to stare at my cottage, my dock, my evidence of success. I took a screenshot, my hands moving automatically while my mind processed what this meant. 6 years of silence, and less than 72 hours after posting photos of an expensive property, my phone rang with demands. The cottage had cost me $425,000. A splurge, yes, but I'd earned it. Decades of careful saving, modest living, disciplined investing. The property was beautiful, peaceful, a small reward for patience and hard work. Brandon had seen it and calculated. Calculated that if I could afford that cottage, I must have liquid assets. Calculated that I was weak enough, lonely enough, desperate enough for his contact that I'd comply with any demand. Calculated that he could snap his fingers and I'd come running with my checkbook open. The realization cut deeper than the phone call itself. This wasn't a change of heart. This wasn't regret or reconciliation. This was predatory. I closed Facebook and opened a new browser tab. Typed Ontario Estate Law Disinheritance Requirements. Then Irrevocable Trust Structures, Canada. Then Contesting a Will, Ontario grounds. My HVAC business had taught me many things. One was to do thorough groundwork before any major project. Another was that professionals existed for a reason. You didn't wire your own electrical systems. You hired experts who knew the codes, the regulations, the pitfalls. I needed an expert now. My desk drawer held business cards accumulated over years. I flipped through until I found what I wanted. Patricia Okonkwo, Estate Law, Okonkwo and Associates. I'd used her when selling the company, when setting up my original will. She was sharp, thorough, and didn't waste time on small talk. I dialed her office. 2 rings. Okonkwo and Associates. How may I help you? This is Walter Hendricks. I need to speak with Patricia today if possible. It's urgent regarding estate planning. A pause. Keyboard clicks. Miss Okonkwo has a full schedule. Could we arrange something for next week? Please tell her it concerns completely restructuring my will. I can work around her schedule. One moment. Hold music played. I stared at Brandon's photo on my phone, the wedding portrait. That smile, so genuine then. Or had I only imagined it was genuine? Mr. Hendricks? The receptionist returned. Miss Okonkwo can see you at 3:30 this afternoon. I'll be there. I spent the next few hours gathering documents, financial statements, property deeds, investment portfolios, records of the $250,000 I'd given Brandon and Stephanie 6 years ago. Patricia would need to see everything, understand the full picture, but more than that, I needed to prepare myself mentally. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. This was about consequences, about demonstrating that respect couldn't be demanded with threats, about showing my son that choices had prices. The drive to Patricia's office took 40 minutes through afternoon traffic. Her building was modern glass and steel near Bay Street, professional without being pretentious. I'd been here before, years ago, when life was simpler. Patricia met me in the lobby. Late 50s, silver-streaked hair pulled back, her handshake firm. She noticed something in my expression immediately. Walter, come in. You sounded serious on the phone. Her conference room overlooked the city, afternoon light filtering through the blinds. I sat across from her and opened my folder, laying out documents methodically. the Facebook screenshots with timestamps. Brandon's viewing history, a timeline documenting 6 years of unanswered messages. My son hasn't spoken to me in 6 years, I said, keeping my voice level. 3 days ago, I posted photos of a cottage I purchased. This morning, he called demanding $175,000. That tells me everything I need to know about why he reached out. Patricia took notes, her pen moving steadily. Tell me about the estrangement, I explained. The company sale, the $250,000 gift, Stephanie's accusations, Brandon's silence while his wife attacked me, the 6 years of nothing that followed. I tried, I continued, tapping my timeline. Cards, messages, every attempt documented here. Every rejection. Patricia studied the papers. When she looked up, her expression was professionally neutral, but her eyes showed understanding. She'd seen this pattern before. What do you want to do, Mr. Hendricks? I want to create a new will. I want to disinherit Brandon completely. Everything I have, approximately $1.2 million in assets, goes to Habitat for Humanity instead. Patricia set down her pen. Mr. Hendricks, I need to ask clearly. Are you certain? Disinheriting your only child is legally valid, but it's significant. Once you present this to him, there's no taking it back. I've had 6 years to think about what family means. My voice was steady. He made his choice when he let his wife tear apart our relationship over money. Now I'm making mine. She nodded slowly, pulled her legal pad closer. If he contests, he'll likely claim undue influence or diminished capacity. We need to document that you're acting voluntarily, that you understand the implications. Then document it. I want this ironclad. For the next hour, we worked through details. Specific language, asset inventory, witness requirements. Patricia asked probing questions about my mental state, my reasoning, my voluntary decision-making. Standard procedure to demonstrate competency if the will was challenged. I answered everything clearly, explaining my reasoning without anger. This was business. Strategic. The same approach I'd used for every major decision in my career. I'll draft this tonight, Patricia said finally. Ready by tomorrow morning. Given the complexity, I'll need a retainer. I wrote the check without hesitation. One more thing. I paused at her door. I want multiple notarized copies prepared. 5, plus the original. Her pen stopped. That's unconventional. Most people keep wills private until after death. I allowed myself a cold smile. I'm not most people, and I want him to understand exactly what his phone call cost him. Patricia studied me, then nodded. I'll arrange it. I drove home through evening traffic, the city lights beginning to glow. The weight of what I'd set in motion felt substantial, real, but my resolve didn't waver. Tomorrow morning, Patricia would have the documents. Then I'd contact Brandon, accept his invitation to discuss the money, bring him something very different from what he expected. I slept poorly, anticipation overriding doubt. By 7, I was showered and dressed. By 8:30, I was in Patricia's office, signing documents. 6 signatures, 6 notarizations, each seal pressed firmly into paper, transforming drafts into official legal instruments. By 10, I was home, staring at my phone. I typed a message to Brandon. I've thought about your request. Let's meet to discuss it properly. When works for you? His response came within minutes, eager. Tomorrow evening, our place? Stephanie's making dinner. 6 p.m. I'll be there. The next 30 hours moved slowly. I prepared, organized my thoughts, placed the documents in a leather portfolio, chose my clothes carefully. Dark trousers, a button-down shirt, nothing flashy, just dignity. At 4:30, I left Toronto, beginning the drive to Vancouver. No, that wasn't right. Brandon lived in Oakville now, 45 minutes west. They'd moved 3 years ago. Information I'd learned through mutual acquaintances, not from my son. Their neighborhood announced itself in manicured lawns and fresh paint, the kind of presentation that mattered to people who cared about appearances. Their house was a 2-story colonial, professional landscaping, the perfect suburban image. I sat in my car, hands on the wheel, the portfolio beside me. Through the front window, I could see movement. They were watching for me. I picked up the portfolio and walked to their door. Measured steps. No hesitation. The door opened before I could knock. "Dad!" Stephanie's voice was too bright, her smile too wide. "We're so glad you could come." She hugged me briefly, a performance of warmth where no warmth existed. Brandon appeared behind her, extending his hand. "Good to see you, Dad, really." The contrast was staggering. 6 years of nothing, and now they greeted me like we'd had brunch last weekend. Their dining room was elaborately staged. Candles, cloth napkins, wine already poured. The meal looked expensive, professionally prepared. "We thought we'd make this special," Stephanie said. "Families should celebrate being together again." I sat, placing the portfolio beside my chair. Brandon's eyes flicked to it, then away. Stephanie poured more wine with slightly trembling hands. The meal proceeded with forced conversation. Brandon asked about my health, my investments, my cottage. Questions designed to inventory my resources without appearing mercenary. Stephanie discussed real estate trends, business opportunities, establishing expertise. I ate little, watched everything. After the main course, Brandon leaned back with practiced casualness. "Dad," about the money I mentioned. "Stephanie and I have an incredible opportunity. A development project in Niagara. Premium condos, projected returns of 20% annually. But we need to move fast. The window closes next week." "We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important," Stephanie added, right on cue. "We've been working so hard on this. It could change everything for us." I leaned back, arms crossed, letting them finish. Brandon laid out vague details, wrapped in financial jargon, meant to sound legitimate while saying nothing concrete. Stephanie nodded along, playing the supportive wife. When they finally paused, I spoke quietly. "I do understand building things. I spent 38 years building mine." I met Brandon's eyes, then Stephanie's. "I also understand what happens when people only see you as a means to an end." I reached for the portfolio, opened it slowly, withdrew 2 copies of the will, slid them across the table like dealing cards. The documents landed between the candles and wine glasses with devastating finality. Brandon picked his up first. I watched his face shift. Confusion, comprehension, fury. He stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. "What is this?" His voice rose. "A will? You brought your will to dinner?" Stephanie read slower, her polished facade crumbling as understanding set in. "You asked for $175,000 after 6 years of silence," I said calmly. "I thought you should know where you stand. You're not in this document. Neither of you. Everything goes to Habitat for Humanity instead." "You can't do this!" Brandon's face had gone red. "I'm your son, your only child. That money is my inheritance." "You were my son." I kept my tone steady. "Then you chose to become a stranger who only calls when he wants money. This is what that choice costs." Stephanie slammed her copy on the table. "We'll contest this. We'll prove you're not competent. No rational person would do this." I stood, preparing to leave. "I'm perfectly sound. Ask the lawyer, the notary, the witnesses. This document is legal, filed, and final." I looked at Brandon, seeing his calculation exposed. "You wanted to know my value in dollars. Now you know. To you, I was worth a phone call after 6 years. To me, my legacy is worth more than that." I walked toward the door. "You'll regret this," Brandon's voice cracked. "You think you can just walk away?" I paused but didn't turn. I've spent 6 years with regrets. Tonight I finally have clarity instead. I stepped into the cool evening air. Behind me, shouting began, but they were arguing with each other now, not me. Accusations about whose idea this had been, whose plan had failed. I drove away, watching in my rearview mirror as the front door stood open. Brandon silhouetted in the light, phone already at his ear. This wasn't ending. This was just beginning. My phone woke me before dawn, buzzing insistently. The screen showed 17 missed calls. Brandon, Stephanie, unknown numbers. Text messages flooding in, too many to count. The war had begun. I made coffee first, showered, dressed, established normalcy before engaging. I'd expected this. Panicked people made mistakes. At my laptop, I documented everything. Screenshots of messages, recordings of voicemails, a spreadsheet tracking every contact attempt. Brandon's early texts alternated between guilt and fury. "Dad, please call. I'm sorry we argued. Let's talk about this." Then, 6 hours later, "You're being completely unreasonable. After everything Mom and I went through when she was sick, you do this? Call me back." My wife Martha had died 12 years ago. Cancer. Brandon invoking her memory as leverage made my stomach turn. Stephanie's messages were purely strategic. An email arrived mid-morning with the subject line, "Legal Notice. Mr. Hendricks, your actions demonstrate either malicious intent or diminished mental capacity. We will be consulting with counsel about challenging your recent will. This can be resolved amicably, or it can become expensive. Your choice." I copied everything into my evidence folder. The construction of defenses required documentation. The third day brought Stephanie herself. I was at my kitchen window when her BMW pulled aggressively into my driveway. She got out, slammed the door, stood on my front lawn in her designer coat. "Walter!" she shouted toward my window. "I know you're in there. You can't hide from family." I stayed back from the window but pulled out my phone, started recording. Ontario was one-party consent for recordings on private property. Stephanie alternated between crying and yelling. "You're being cruel, vindictive. Everyone needs to know what kind of father abandons his only son." Neighbors were noticing. Curtains moved across the street. Then Michael Chen emerged from next door. 71. Retired teacher. The kind of man who'd seen everything and feared nothing. He walked toward Stephanie with measured calm. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to leave." His voice carried authority. "This is disturbing the neighborhood, and Mr. Hendricks is within his rights not to engage. If you don't leave, I'll be making a phone call." Stephanie turned on him. "You don't understand what he's—" "I understand you're on someone else's property, making a scene." Michael's tone didn't change. "Time to go." She got back in her car, but not before shouting toward my window. "This isn't over. We'll see what a judge thinks about your mental state." Michael waited until she'd driven away, then walked to my door. I opened it before he could knock. "You all right, Walter?" His weathered face showed concern. That was quite a performance. "I'm fine, Michael." Documented everything. I gestured to my phone. "If this escalates, might need you as a witness. 30 years teaching high school. I know how family disputes turn ugly." He nodded slowly. "You've got my number." That evening, I composed an email to Patricia. Attached everything. Screenshots, recordings, timeline, spreadsheet. Subject line, anticipated legal challenge, documentation. Her response came within the hour. "This is thorough. Schedule a meeting for tomorrow. We need to prepare for what's coming." The meeting confirmed what I suspected. Brandon and Stephanie had retained Daniel Morrison, a litigation attorney known for aggressive inheritance disputes. They were filing to contest the will on grounds of diminished capacity and undue influence. "We need medical documentation," Patricia said. "A full cognitive evaluation, psychological assessment, anything proving you're of sound mind." I spent the next week in appointments. Dr. Patterson, my physician of 20 years, conducted comprehensive testing, memory, reasoning, processing speed, blood work. Everything came back clean. "Walter, your cognitive function is excellent," he said, reviewing results. "Better than most men your age. Blood pressure good, no neurological concerns. You're healthier than half my patients in their 50s. I need that in writing, detailed. Someone's claiming I'm not competent to make my own decisions." He looked up, understanding immediately. "I'll have a comprehensive report by tomorrow." The psychological evaluation came next. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, specialist in elder competency assessments. 2 hours of testing, mental status examination, decision-making scenarios. "Walk me through how you made this decision," she said. "What was your thought process?" I laid it out clearly. My son didn't contact me for 6 years. Then he called demanding $175,000 the day after seeing photos of my cottage. That showed me he only valued me as a source of money. I consulted my attorney, considered my options, and decided my assets would better serve an organization that actually builds things for people who need them. That's coherent, logical reasoning. She made notes. No signs of coercion, depression, or impaired judgment. Patricia reviewed both reports with visible satisfaction. This is solid. Two independent professionals, both confirming full competency. Combined with your documentation of their harassment, their case is weak. But they'll keep pushing, I said. They will. What's your next move? I was quiet for a moment. Then, what if I remove what they're fighting over? Not from the will. Make it disappear before I'm gone. Patricia leaned forward. Explain. If they're contesting my will, they're fighting over my estate after I die. But what if significant portions aren't there anymore? What if I transfer assets now, during my lifetime, to the charity, an irrevocable trust? She pulled her laptop closer. That's aggressive. Once done, those assets are gone. You can't change your mind. I won't change my mind. She studied me for a long moment. Let me draft something. Come back Thursday. I spent those days reviewing finances, account statements, investment portfolios, property valuations, calculated what I could transfer while maintaining comfortable retirement. The number settled at $400,000. Significant enough to matter, not so much I'd compromise my security. Thursday arrived. Patricia had prepared thoroughly. An irrevocable charitable trust removes assets from your estate immediately, she explained. They're gone. Not in your will. Not contestable. Brandon and Stephanie can fight over what remains, but they can't touch what's already transferred. And my living expenses? You'll retain approximately $800,000 in assets, plus your properties. More than enough for comfortable retirement. I studied the trust documents, pages of legal language, but the core was clear. Irrevocable transfer to Habitat for Humanity. Once signed, permanent. Once I sign, no one can challenge it. Claim I was incompetent. We have your medical evaluations, witness testimony, documentation of your deliberative process. This trust is as bulletproof as any legal document can be. I looked at the papers. $400,000 gone from any future fight. Transformed from contested inheritance into immediate charitable benefit. They want to fight over my money? Let's give them less to fight over. The signing was meticulous. Same witnesses as the will, same careful notarization. When completed, I called my investment broker. Mark, I need to execute a transfer. $400,000 in securities from my primary investment account to a new trust account. Silence. Then, that's substantial, Mr. Hendricks. Charitable trust. Habitat for Humanity. People who build things deserve support. I'll process it today. Patricia watched me pocket my phone. You mentioned wanting to make a public statement. I'd advise caution. I understand. But Brandon and Stephanie are controlling the narrative. People are hearing I'm senile or cruel. I want my version out there. Keep it brief, factual. Don't name them. Run it by me first. That evening, I composed carefully. Multiple drafts. Removed anything bitter or defensive. Finally, families are built on respect and love, not financial obligation. After much thought and consultation with legal and medical professionals, I've made decisions about my legacy that reflect my values. Everyone has the right to choose how their life's work benefits the world. Patricia approved. I posted. Comments accumulated quickly. Michael Chen. Well said, Walter. A man's entitled to his decisions. Former colleagues from the HVAC industry, neighbors, friends from my curling league. Support from people who'd known me for years. The narrative was shifting. 3 weeks passed. The legal challenges continued, but momentum had shifted in my favor. Then my phone rang. Brandon's name on the screen. Dad. His voice was subdued, nothing like the angry demands of previous calls. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but Stephanie and I have been doing a lot of thinking. We handled everything wrong. Could we meet? Not about money. About us. Immediate skepticism. After everything, this felt calculated. Where? I asked. Anywhere you want. Tim Hortons on Lake Shore. Saturday, 2 p.m. We'll be there. Thank you, Dad. Really. I spent the next 2 days preparing. Verified my phone's recording app worked properly. Ontario's one-party consent law meant I could record any conversation I participated in. Saturday arrived. I entered early, chose a corner table with my back to the wall, activated the recording, placed my phone face down before they arrived. Brandon and Stephanie entered together. No expensive clothes today. Casual, subdued. Brandon's eyes looked tired. They sat across from me, both wearing expressions of remorse. Dad, I know we handled everything wrong. Brandon's voice trembled slightly. The things I said, the way I've been talking to someone, a therapist. I realized I let Stephanie's anxiety about money affect how I treated you. Stephanie leaned forward. Mr. Hendricks, Walter, I owe you an apology too. I pushed Brandon to demand money when we should have just asked to reconnect. Financial pressure made me lose perspective on what's important. I nodded slowly. I appreciate you saying that. So have we, Brandon said. We don't care about the will or the money. We just want you back in our lives. I let silence hang. Then spoke carefully. I've been reconsidering some decisions, wondering if I acted too hastily. Brandon's eyes sharpened slightly. Reconsidering? Like the will? So they knew. They'd been investigating. Just thinking out loud, I said. Nothing certain. Brandon leaned forward. Dad, if you did reconsider, we wouldn't need much. Maybe just enough to cover some debts. $175,000 would make such a difference. We have mortgage payments causing stress, Stephanie added quickly. If you could help with those, maybe set up something regular, even $4,000 monthly, we could focus on rebuilding our relationship. I pulled out a notepad, wrote down the figures, tapped my pen thoughtfully. You're saying financial stress is preventing you from being present in this relationship? Exactly. Brandon didn't hear the trap. Once we're financially secure, we can really invest in family. Sunday dinners, holidays together. Stephanie laughed nervously. I'd even tolerate your curling friends at Christmas dinner if it meant having you there. So if the financial piece was resolved, you'd prioritize family? Absolutely. Brandon nodded. That's really what this has been about. Security. I'd heard enough. 20 minutes of discussing dollar amounts, payment schedules, what they'd tolerate for money, all recorded. I stood. I'll think about everything you've said. This has been clarifying. Dad, wait. Brandon's voice carried desperation. When will we hear from you? I'll be in touch. I drove home and immediately backed up the audio file. Emailed a copy to Patricia, then sat with headphones, listening again. Brandon's voice. Once we're financially secure, we can really invest in family. Stephanie, I'd even tolerate your curling friends. I stopped the playback, sent Patricia a text. Meeting tomorrow. I have something you need to hear. The conference room felt formal. Brandon, Stephanie, and their attorney Daniel Morrison sat on one side. I took my seat across from them, carrying only a slim folder. Daniel opened professionally. My clients believe Mr. Hendricks' recent decisions were made under emotional duress. However, they're prepared to settle if Mr. Hendricks will restore Mr. Brandon Hendricks as primary beneficiary with a minimum inheritance of $900,000. Patricia responded calmly. Let me address the capacity claim first. She slid documents across. Dr. Patterson, Mr. Hendricks' physician of 20 years. Perfect cognitive scores. Dr. Mitchell, clinical psychologist specializing in competency assessments. Full mental capacity. Sound decision-making. Daniel attempted a counter. The emotional context. The timeline shows careful deliberation, Patricia interrupted. Consultation with counsel. Methodical execution. Furthermore, she paused. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Hendricks established an irrevocable charitable trust, transferring $400,000. Those funds are gone. They cannot be contested. Stephanie's face went white. You what? After your challenge was filed, I decided if you wanted to fight over my estate, I'd make it smaller. Brandon turned to Daniel, panicked. Can he do that? Daniel's professional composure cracked. An irrevocable trust properly executed is beyond challenge. Patricia delivered the final blow. There's one more thing. She connected a speaker to her phone. Mr. Hendricks met with your clients 4 days ago. This conversation was legally recorded. She pressed play. Brandon's voice filled the room. Once we're financially secure, we can really invest in family. Stephanie's laugh. I'd even tolerate your curling friends. Brandon again. Could we talk timelines? How soon could changes be made? The recording ended. Daniel conferred quietly with Brandon and Stephanie. Their whispered argument was sharp, bitter. Finally, Daniel spoke. After reviewing the evidence, my clients have decided to withdraw their challenge. Stephanie hissed at Brandon. Your tolerate comment. You couldn't stick to the script? Brandon's face crumpled. He looked at me. Dad, please. This isn't how it should end. I stood slowly. 6 years ago, you chose money over me. You stopped calling, stopped visiting, cut me out completely, until you saw photos of a cottage. Then suddenly I was worth contacting, but only with a demand. That showed me exactly what I meant to you. I paused. Now you know what that choice costs. I walked toward the door. You'll both be fine. You have jobs, health, each other. You just won't have my money. Live with the choices you made. Behind me, Patricia's voice. Daniel, I'll send withdrawal documents for signature. This matter is concluded. I drove home through late afternoon traffic. The city looked different, sharper. I'd spent 6 years hoping for reconciliation, keeping doors open, waiting for my son to remember I was more than a bank account. That wait was over. At home, I made coffee, sat in my living room. The photo albums were still on the shelf. I didn't open them. Those memories belonged to a different relationship, a different son. My phone buzzed. Michael Chen. Heard things got resolved. Hope you're okay. I texted back. I'm fine. Thanks for everything. Another message. Patricia, well done. You protected what matters. I set the phone down and looked around my house. Modest, comfortable, mine. My cottage waited in Muskoka. My investments were secure. $400,000 was already supporting families who needed homes. People who understood that building something meaningful required effort and integrity. Brandon and Stephanie would tell their version, paint me as cruel, vindictive. But I had the recordings, the documentation, the evidence showing who chose what. I'd spent 38 years in HVAC, understanding systems, understanding that you couldn't build something lasting on a faulty foundation, understanding that sometimes you had to remove damaged components before the whole system failed. This was simply another kind of maintenance, building boundaries, protecting what I'd created, ensuring my legacy went to people who valued effort over entitlement. The sun was setting, painting my living room gold. I sat in my chair, coffee growing cold, and felt something I hadn't felt in 6 years. Peace, not happiness. There was sadness in this ending, grief for the relationship that might have been. But peace. Tomorrow, I'd call Habitat for Humanity, see how they plan to use the trust, maybe volunteer with some builds, work alongside people who understood that creating something meaningful required more than demands and manipulation. Tonight, I just sat in the quiet of my home, free from false hope, free from waiting for someone who only saw me as a resource. The legal war was over. I'd won. But more importantly, I'd protected what I'd spent a lifetime building. Not just money, dignity, autonomy, the right to choose who benefited from my life's work. That was victory enough. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Click the video on screen for another story. Thank you for watching.